حطيت difficulty. حطيت difficulty easy. difficulty ما جاب.
ليش حطيت؟
أنا حطيت نار جاب.
ليه ده؟
يقول لي لا. يقول لي مثل ما شفت يلعب ما شفت يلعب نار. يقول بس دامج زيادة. more bullets. Constant noise in it, not age. OBS, check. شو بقى؟ ميتر.
مروحة؟
check. أنا مسوي له بوست. لكن نيفر ما يلقط من هنا، يلقط دايركتلي من زوم صح؟
So we are starting in 1 minute.
نروح افتح زوم. We did one of the meeting rooms. Sure. Online as well. Perfect. We're watching, and if anything, we'll come on.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this program on authentic leadership. Every time you hear the word leadership, it is always associated with somebody who has a sense of power, somebody who is in authority. Today, our topic is about how every individual, irrespective of power or authority, can be a leader in his or her area of work. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Aju Samuel. I'm co-founder of an organization called the Performance Factory. The Performance Factory is a strategy consulting company, and what we primarily do is we help organizations design and develop their strategic plans, along with that ensuring that the leadership teams of these organizations are in line with the strategic goals of the organization. So what is authentic leadership? When you look at the word authentic leadership, you have to break them both into two separate words. At the core is the word authentic, which means genuine, being real. And at the other side is the word leadership, which is to take charge or be in control. So when you are genuinely in control, genuinely in charge, or you're in charge of the situation that you are in, the combination makes it authentic leadership. So is this meant only for people who are leading teams, leading departments, leading organizations, leading countries? Absolutely not. Authentic leadership is for every individual. It can be in your personal life as well as in your professional life. And as Paulinus mentioned, to thy own self be true, which simply means when a person is absolutely truthful to himself or herself, that is when the person is able to display authentic leadership. To everybody on the Zoom call today, thank you for joining. The chat box is open. In case you have any questions at any point in time, please do pop your questions into the chat box as we go through this presentation and session on authentic leadership. I may also post some questions, so please feel free to answer either via chat or through your voice on the Zoom. So, coming back to the concept of authentic leadership, we've established the fact that anybody in any position can display authentic leadership, and the entire perspective of authentic leadership is when one is very genuine, very real, and is in charge of the situation. Now, within the authentic leadership, there are three different perspectives that I'd like to concentrate on today. The first one is the intrapersonal perspective. The intrapersonal perspective is a very, very important perspective. And within this perspective is where a person reflects upon themselves to see what is the traits or the characteristics that somebody has to be called a leader. And when somebody is a leader, the person brings their experiences to the fore. So what kind of experiences makes a leader? And therefore, what makes the leader feel that they are in the right place, that they are making the right decisions? So within the intrapersonal perspective, there are three very significant facts that comes across. What is the characteristic within the leader? What experiences have they had that makes them that leader? And what makes the leader feel convicted or give him the authority or the perspective that he is a leader? Now, I'm going to take a couple of minutes here. If you can just, on the chat box, drop in some words of what you think a true leader should look like, or what are the characteristics of a true leader. If you can type that into your chat box, I'll look at your responses and then we can continue this conversation. Just one word or two words of what according to you makes a very good leader. I'll give everybody 2 minutes. If you can just quickly type in a couple of words. What, according to you, are the characteristics of a good leader? A good example to others, says Manar. Thank you. Very good. Somebody who can be an example to other people, which means people would like to watch this person and try and become like that person. Very good. Any more responses? What, according to you, makes a good leader? Responsibility, says Inas. Fantastic. Somebody who's responsible, who does what he says that he will do. Somebody who is taking up the responsibility on behalf of the team or on behalf of a group of people. Somebody who has the ability to stand by what he or she has said. Fantastic. Very good. Thank you. Good and clear vision. Thank you, Leah. Good and clear vision. Now, vision is something that is extremely important part of a leadership. Vision is like mentioning where are we headed? What is the ultimate destination that we want to reach? And not having that clear vision, not having that clear perspective, makes everybody confused and puts in a lot of doubt in people's mind. So absolutely right. Clear and good and clear vision is definitely a very, very, very good, important character that a leader must have. I'll still wait for one or two more responses just to see whether there is any other perspectives that you have. I have the chat box open, so please put in a word or two that you think. As of now, I think what I've heard from the team is that somebody who's a good example to others, somebody who's responsible, and somebody who has a good and clear vision. Fantastic points. I think that really, really sets the tone for what the leadership should be. Now, when you look at experiences, all of us have experiences. All of us have gone through life, and as we all know, life has certain positive factors and certain negative factors. I've just got another feedback from Ronak, which says confidence and decision making. Absolutely. A leader must be confident and must make decisions. It's not always that a decision will go right. It's not always that everything that a leader touches will be absolutely brilliant. But nevertheless, making that decision, then learning from what the outcome of that decision was, and making better decisions is what truly makes a leader. Thank you for your responses. Coming back to the experiences, everybody has multiple experiences, as I mentioned. Some of these experiences are positive, some of these experiences are negative. So what makes an authentic leader? How does an authentic leader use his or her experience to their advantage? Typically in life, we see people who had positive experiences trying to add more positivity to whatever they do. But the unfortunate thing about negative experiences is that a lot of people feel dejected, feel quite bad about negative consequences, and unfortunately, they then take poor decisions. They become less confident, and sometimes those decisions that they make based on negative experiences not only affects themselves, but also starts affecting people around them. And that is when it becomes extremely dangerous. Because when you start hurting other people, when you start deflecting onto other people your negative experiences, then you are not only destroying yourself, but you start destroying others as well. And therefore, an authentic leader is a person who has the ability to be true to himself or herself, as we mentioned earlier. So irrespective of the negative experience, the authentic leader has the ability to understand where is the mistake he or she has made, and then make corrective actions rather than creating a situation which will damage other people. Fantastic. Thank you for your responses. So the intrapersonal perspective talks about what characteristics a leader needs to have, which you have already mentioned. Fantastic. Next, how does that person use their experiences to shape themselves as a leader? And therefore, finally, what kind of convictions does a leader have? Now, what are convictions? Convictions are a certain level of surety. We may have done a few things in a particular way, and they may have shown results. With that, we will start believing, or we'll start getting convinced that that particular way works. And therefore, it is directly linked to the experiences. Every time you do something in a particular way and it becomes successful, you get convinced that that way works. Unfortunately, sometimes that is true, but sometimes that can be wrong. Because a particular decision made in a particular situation could work in that particular situation, but in another situation it may not work. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that you're building a house. Typically when you build a house, especially in the modern day, we give a contract to a contractor, and then we agree on the budget, and then we start paying the contractor to execute the work. Obviously, the relationship starts with a lot of faith, a lot of trust, and both parties are happy with the initial work. But as time goes by, the contractor starts becoming a little relaxed, does not finish work on time, starts charging more money for the work that you had already agreed upon. You may have had a budget in mind which you agreed with the contractor, and now the budget is going a little beyond what you had planned. All of this over a period of time makes you feel that either the contractor is cheating you or he's unjustifiably charging you. Unfortunately, this leads to a negative experience. Now, if you take this negative experience in every other transaction that you do in life, so tomorrow you might be going to buy a car, After that, you might be planning to send your child to a university. And in all of these decisions, when somebody else is trying to help you, if you keep the negative perspective that you had while you were dealing with the contractor, then always you are going to be suspicious. You are going to be doubtful. You are not going to believe the other person. And what that makes you is that makes you a very, very unauthentic leader and starts spreading negativity all around you. So the experience that you have in one aspect of your life may or may not apply similarly in another aspect of your life. So an authentic leader is the person who has the ability to evaluate each situation and each individual and each incident in its separate context, and then be able to bring about the best in every decision they make. This is a very, very important perspective, something that I would really like all of us to understand. Do not take the experiences, either positive or negative, from one incident or one situation and use the same into another situation or another experience, because that might have negative consequences. It is very important for an authentic leader to evaluate each situation and each incident on its individual merit and not on a generalized merit. I'll pause for a couple of minutes here. If anybody has any questions, please do drop it on the chat box once again. Just a couple of minutes. If you have no questions, I'll wait for a couple of minutes and I'll continue. In case you have any questions or any thoughts or even a perspective, please do drop that onto the chat box, and I'd like to continue after that. Even if it's something that you have imagined, you can drop in a line if you would like to. Great. I'll keep waiting to see if something comes across, but while I am doing that, let me continue. Our next perspective is the interpersonal perspective. Now, this is the perspective between an individual and the other person. Remember, the intrapersonal perspective was about yourself. What experiences you had, what kind of leadership you would like to have, and how do you get convinced about your leadership skill. But when we move to interpersonal is between two people, right? I think the number one question that comes across is, what type of relationship does the leader have with their followers? Now, we have seen multiple leaders in our lifetime. We have seen leaders in our schools. We have seen leaders in our universities. We have seen leaders at our workplace. We may have seen leadership even in our parents, in our society. We may have seen leaders at our community level. And of course, we have seen leaders at the country level. And if you look back at the leadership traits across all of these areas that we have been exposed to, you will realize that people like to follow those leaders who inspire them, who encourages them, who makes them a better person. Similarly, people do not like leaders who discourage them, who try and control them, and who try and deceive them. So the relationship a leader must have with the followers is a relationship of trust, is a relationship of faith. Now, I'm going to take a couple of minutes here, and I just want you to put down in the chat box the names of some of the leaders that you think are people that you've always admired. Names of leaders that you think are extremely popular and somebody who you admire. Please take a couple of minutes to drop in that line, please. Names of leaders that you've respected. The chat box is on. Please do drop in some names. Any leader that you are fond of, or somebody that you have admired? I've not received any response yet. I'm sure you have somebody who you really admire. Great, I'll wait for 30 more seconds and I'll continue. Sheikh Ahmed Khalil. Okay, fantastic. Very good. I've received one response. Yeah. Somebody who's known for his leadership. Brilliant. Somebody who's inspirational. Somebody who manages to take people along with his vision. Very true. Any other names? Any other names that comes to your mind? Local, global? Great. So I'm sure you have some of these names in your mind. I'm sure you must be knowing why you admire them. It could be their actions. It could be the words they have used. It could be the books they have written. It could be the kind of movement that they have inspired. So leaders come in multiple forms. And that is why people like and look up to those leaders for inspiration, for encouragement. Now when you look at the third perspective, so where does leadership actually come in? Right? When a person is called a leader, and our imagination of the word leader is somebody who's quite old, somebody who's experienced, somebody who's probably in their 40s or the 50s, and somebody who's leading large organizations. However, psychologists would tell you that leadership traits are actually built when you are a child, right? And there are 4 key aspects that come towards building a leadership character in an individual, typically right from childhood. Let's go through each of these 4 perspectives. The first perspective is a physical perspective. The ability of individuals to do certain things in a particular manner, to be able to swim, to be able to cycle, to be able to climb trees. All of this gives a certain sense of confidence. You will notice children are naturally courageous, naturally very enterprising. They like to try out new things. And unfortunately, sometimes it's the adults who stop them from experiencing their childhood. So children who've actually got into a lot of physical activities at a very young age tend to show very good leadership skills because they learn the ability to try and try and try until they succeed. Because physical activities are not easy. They sometimes lead you to fall. They sometimes lead you to hurt yourself. And yet when children get up and they continue to do what they do, they gain confidence. They become much more capable of understanding the mistake and then correcting them. So children who engage in physical activities are, over a period of time, very, very capable of leadership capabilities and abilities. The second aspect of developmental perspective is social aspect. So what is social? When a child has the ability to mingle freely with his family members, when he has a lot of friends, when there's a great community, the larger family which is made of cousins and brothers and sisters, the society as well. When a child has great interaction skills with others around the person, the child becomes a lot more confident. In social settings, they experience a lot of learnings. Sometimes they have to fight to get something. Sometimes they have to cry to get something. Sometimes they smile in appreciation. All of these things allows the child to understand how does the other person react to his or her behavior. And that sets a sense of social perspective to the person's development. And therefore, the social aspect of development is a very, very important aspect of leadership building. When a child experiences positive experiences by interacting with people around them, they become a lot more confident, they become a lot more positive, and they understand the ability of being in charge of themselves as well as a group of people. And this is very important because children who don't have good social experiences, unfortunately, will never be able to experience this and may not be able to develop their leadership skills. The third perspective, or the third aspect in the developmental perspective, is cognitive. Now, cognitive skills are skills that comes in from your learning, from going to school, from achieving success in acquiring new skills. Right from the days when a child starts learning the letters, starts learning numbers, and is able to memorize them, or is able to repeat them, there is a sense of success that the child feels. And the child, with every successful endeavor, the child starts becoming a lot more confident. When teachers ask a question and the child has the ability to answer the question, the child becomes a lot more confident. When teachers tell the child that they can help other people, the child becomes even more confident. So a good education system, and I don't mean only schools here, I mean education at home, education through books, education through e-channels, education through television. There are multiple ways how you pick up your cognitive skills, right? And when you get those cognitive skills in place, and when you become confident in acquiring those skills, you automatically start developing your leadership skills. Again, it leads to confidence, it leads to empowerment, it leads to positive experiences. The fourth aspect of the developmental perspective is the emotional perspective. Now, this is one of the most important parts of authentic leadership. In today's modern world, we use the word emotional intelligence, and we know how important emotional intelligence is in the development of a leader. But go back to the childhood, the love that a child gets at home, the child gets from the parents, from the siblings, from the larger family, from grandparents, from cousins, from friends. All of that shows that the person is valued, that the person is looked after, the person is cared for. And with that experience comes an inherent leadership skill. An emotional aspect of a child's development is very, very important in ensuring that the person becomes an authentic leader. Because when they get love, they are able to give love. And that is a very, very important aspect of leadership. When you get respect, you have the ability to give respect. And therefore, if I were to summarize, the four aspects of the developmental perspective is the physical, the ability to do things which are hard, where you fail and then you repeat it and then you become successful. The social, where you interact with society, where you interact with others, including strangers, and you get a sense of confidence that comes from those interactions. The cognitive, where you learn new skills, where you have the ability to showcase those skills, where you have the ability to repeat those skills, again instills a lot of confidence. And finally, the emotional, where you feel that you're cared for, where you feel that you're loved for, adds a lot more perspective. Now, all of these four things cumulatively come in and develop an individual. And if you notice, some of the leaders that we admire are people who we know have had equal balance of all of these four areas. And I think that is what makes a leader an authentic leader, and that is what makes a leader somebody who can inspire others. So just to summarize, if I may just go back to the summary of this, if you look at the authentic leadership, we have three perspectives: the intrapersonal perspective, the interpersonal perspective, and the developmental perspective. These are the three perspectives that we spoke about. Now, let's look at what do we think about it, right? From a perspective of what are your thoughts? Anybody has any opinion? I'll again leave the chat box open for a couple of minutes so that if you have any opinions or any thought process, I'd like to hear about that, especially around the three perspectives that we have spoken about before I move to the next area. Couple of minutes. Anybody, any views on what we have gone through until now? Great. Now let's go to the theoretical approaches. Now, where does leadership come from? Right? A lot of people will tell you that you are born with leadership. Somebody is a born leader. Remember, we just spoke about the 4 developmental perspectives. What we don't know of most leaders is that we don't know what their childhood was like. And therefore, we've just established the fact that if a child has great physical capabilities, great social capabilities, great cognitive capabilities, and great emotional capabilities, the person becomes eventually a very good leader. So, to the theory that somebody is born with leadership is a little bit of a myth, because truly speaking, it is experiences that a person goes through in life that shapes them into a great leader. We do tend to meet leaders mostly in our adult life, and therefore we assume that they're naturally born with those leadership skills. But most of the times, it's the developmental age right from childhood that shape them towards the kind of leader they have become. Now let's look at a practical approach. Now, there is a theory on the authentic action wheel where they talk about an authentic leader has to have certain characteristics. And there are 5 key characteristics that are very, very important in an authentic leader. The first characteristic is having a purpose in life. What am I here for? How do I contribute to this community? How do I contribute to the society? How do I contribute towards this organization? How do I contribute to my family? How do I contribute to my friends? The purpose, the reason why you are on earth. And what purpose does, if you look right on top here, is that purpose leads to passion. Purpose leads to passion, because when somebody has a purpose in life, they are able to put the best into what they do. They're able to be extremely passionate, right? If you look at Messi as a footballer, extremely passionate about his football, right? If you look at somebody who is into arts, who's into music, who's into probably rock climbing, somebody who's playing tennis, you will see the most successful people are those people who have an extreme passion for the sport or for that particular activity. When you have absolute passion, you make it important that the purpose of your life is to excel in those areas. So one of the most important characteristics of an authentic leader is having a purpose, knowing the reason why you are in a particular situation or in a particular area. The second most important thing is values. Now, values are something that we all have. We all claim to have values. We might have values of commitment. We might have values of transparency. We might have values of integrity. We may refuse to lie to other people. So a lot of values every individual has. And values usually comes in from homes, because the way you are embedded within your personal space becomes the values that you bring into your professional space. And values more or less determine behavior. The person behaves based on the person's values. So, for example, if somebody is nice to somebody, always, irrespective of what that experience is, that means the value system says that I should not be bad to somebody. For example, if somebody is very transparent and is very clear to others, that means the value system is about ensuring that he has to be always brutally honest. So values are directly proportional to the behavior that we showcase. So when people look at us behaving in society, they are able to very quickly determine what our value systems are. The third thing, or third characteristic of an authentic leader, is relationships. And how does that manifest itself? It shows in how well the leader is connected to the people. A lot of leaders have absolutely no connection with the followers. People do not like them. People do not want to be associated with them. But then good leaders are people who the followers want to be sitting next to. They want to touch them. They want to be with them. They want to talk to them. They want to exchange ideas with them. That's because the leader has a connection with his audience, a connection with his followers, a connection with people who they like. And relationships and connectedness builds an amazing leader, because the leader now is able to understand that everybody has different perspectives in life, different views of life, and the leader now starts connecting towards those views and towards those perspectives. The fourth characteristic of an authentic leader is self-discipline. Now, this is a very interesting thing. A lot of us are disciplined when there are rules. For example, we drive at 120 kilometers per hour on the road, because if you go more than 120 kilometers, the camera will flash and you will get a fine. We stop at the red light simply because if you cross the red light, you will be fined. We stand in the queue because if you skip the queue, somebody will ask you to go back or back of the queue. So most of the times we are disciplined when there are rules associated with it. We come to office at 8 o'clock in the morning because that's when you need to put your attendance in, right? But what is self-discipline? Self-discipline is when the person is disciplined irrespective of whether there are rules. When the person has a self-inbuilt discipline and does not need rules or regulations to be disciplined. Irrespective of whether there is a red light, at a junction this person will stop. Irrespective of whether there are cameras, this person will always drive at the prescribed speed. Irrespective of whether there is an attendance system, this person will always arrive at work on time. And so on and so forth. Somebody who's consistent, somebody who does not need rules to make him, instead creates rules for himself as part of good, authentic leadership. And finally, the fifth perspective, or the fifth characteristic of a good leader is heart. Now, this is something that we all know. It's about somebody who has the ability to understand the other person's problems, can be compassionate. Instead of saying my way or the highway, somebody who has the ability to understand and be compassionate and to care for somebody else, who has a heart and who has the ability to use that heart to help other people or to be of influence to other people. So just to summarize, the 5 key characteristics of an authentic leader is somebody who has a purpose which translates itself into passion, somebody who has values which translates itself into the way you behave, somebody who maintains very good relationships which translates itself into the way you connect with people, somebody who is self-disciplined which translates itself into consistency or consistent behavior, and finally somebody who has heart. Therefore, somebody who has the ability translates itself into compassion, who can think for others even when it's not important to think for others. Again, I'm going to take a couple of minutes here in case anybody has got questions, would love to hear from you. It's been a one-way traffic, so if you have any views, any thoughts, anything that you think is not mentioned here, please do feel free to put in a sentence or two or a word, and we can have a quick discussion on that, because otherwise it's just me speaking, so it'll be great to hear from you. Anybody who agrees with this, disagrees with this, who thinks that there is some other characteristic that a leader should have that we are missing here, please do feel free to write a word or two. I don't know if somebody is typing, or can I move on? Great. I'm taking the liberty to move on because it doesn't look like anybody is typing. And I think if you're still typing, do not feel left out. Please continue to type, and we can take the conversation. Great. Fantastic. What is the relationship with the heart? Fantastic. Inas, thanks a lot for that question. Great. Leadership, and especially authentic leadership, is about the ability for somebody to understand the other person. Right? You may not be going through the same situation. You may not be going through the same trouble. In fact, you may not be going through any trouble. But when you can understand the problems that the other person has, and you are able to work towards that person's interest, to ensure that that person is out of their problems, that means you have compassion. That means you can feel that person. And therefore, compassion comes from the heart. It does not come from the mind. It's not logical. It's not a mathematical formula. It's not a science. It's more an emotion. And therefore, the heart is the place from where those emotions do come in. Now, I don't mean physically the heart, but I mean that's where our consciousness or our compassion comes from, having a certain amount of love for others and a thought for others. So the relationship with the heart is not the physical organ heart. Is generally to say, typically when we meet people, we always place our hands on our heart just to say, I think of you, or I care for you. And I think that's what it is. Please don't go by the physical meaning of the word heart. Any other question? Inas, I hope I've answered you well, or to your satisfaction. Any other questions that anybody has around the characteristics? Do you think any characteristic is missing? Do you think a leader should have some other characteristic that is not listed here? Thanks, Inas. Do you think there is any other characteristic that is not listed here but is important in a leader? Great. Like I said, smart. Very good, Manar. Yes. So smart. It's a fantastic perspective. Thank you, Manar, for saying that. Now, there are two ways of looking at smartness, right? The genuine sense of smart is somebody who has the ability to do things in a faster, easier, simpler way in comparison to somebody else. Right? So if somebody who is able to think through a situation and find solutions in the least problematic way, you would call that person smart. There is a negative connotation of the word smart also, which is somebody who takes shortcuts, somebody who tries and cuts corners and tries to reach somewhere faster, right? So, I mean, the people generally tend to call them smart as well. But let's take the positive aspect of smart. Somebody who is able to find a solution to a particular situation in the easiest, quickest manner. And therefore, yes, smart is a very, very important trait of a leader. without a doubt. I would definitely say that. But at the same time, I think it's very important to understand that if somebody has purpose, somebody has values, somebody has good relationships, somebody is self-disciplined, and somebody has compassion, in a sense, the person has the ability to understand other people. The person is very consistent. Person behaves in the right manner. Person has great connection with people and is very passionate. You will naturally find that that person is smart. But you're absolutely right. I think smart is a very, very valuable characteristic in a leader. Great. Keep that chat box going while I continue. Now, when you look at the foundation of authentic leadership, right? When you look at the foundation of authentic leadership, there are 4 foundations to it. And the first part is something about yourself, right? Which is self-awareness. Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know what your weaknesses are? Do you know where you need help? Do you know where you can help others, right? And when I talk about this, this is not about revealing it to other people, but internally being able to be very, very clear that I am good in these things and I'm not so good in these things. For example, I might be very, very good in analyzing documents, but I might not be very good in managing a team of people. I might be very good in ensuring operations is done in a particular way, but I might not be very good in communication, right? So self-awareness is the ability to know what are the skills that one has and what are the skills one does not have. And how does this help? It helps primarily because if you are in a setting of a team, and when I say team, I don't mean only work. It could be a sport, it could be work, it could be family, it could be anywhere, right? Where you're working with, where you're associate with other people. A person who's self-aware knows what their strengths are and knows what other people's strengths are, will always find the ability to connect with people who can fill the gap that they have in themselves. So self-awareness is a situation where I know these are my strengths, and if I have certain weaknesses, I go and find somebody else in my team or in my community or in my family who has strengths which are my weakness, and then we work together. So self-awareness is very, very important because we all know no human being can have all the skill sets that are required for this world. The second foundation of authentic leadership is internalized moral perspective. Now, what is internalized moral perspective? Very simply put, it is somebody who has a conscience, who talks to him and tells him when he's wrong that you are wrong, when you're right that you are right. And this is not a third person. It is you yourself who has the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Somebody who uses morals or ethics to decide whether what he is doing is right or wrong. The third foundation is balanced processing. Now, what is balanced processing? A lot of times, people react very quickly when they get information. When somebody gives you bad news about something, you immediately may get angry, or you may immediately react in a harsh manner. However, authentic leaders have what is known as balanced processing. They first take in the information. They understand why that particular situation is happening. And then from there, they decide what decision to make. So instead of making a very haste or a quick decision, they process the information, they understand the situation, and they use a lot of sense before they take some action. And therefore, that is known as balanced processing. And finally, rational transparency. And that's a very important foundation. Rational transparency means being able to be transparent to others being able to be open to others and explaining the logic rationally, which is with enough data as to why you are doing what you're doing. A lot of leaders sometimes make decisions, and some of these decisions are very good decisions, but they don't explain the reason why they're making those decisions, which means the followers are confused. Why is this person making this decision? But a good leader or an authentic leader is a leader who has the ability to make a decision and also explain the rationale or the reason behind that decision so that people understand why that decision is being made. And therefore, people trust that person because of that openness, because of that transparency. So once again, the foundation, there are two internal processes and two external processes. Number one, self-awareness, knowing themselves, what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses, and then finding other people who can complement their weaknesses to work with. The second is internalized model perspective. This is your conscience, which tells you when you're wrong and when you're not wrong. The ability to judge yourself about your actions. You don't need anybody else to come and tell you whether you're right or wrong. And these are the two internal aspects. And the two external aspects, the balanced processing. When an event happens, instead of immediately reacting, go and find out more information. Go and find out more data. Analyze it better. And then make that decision what you need to do. And finally, when you make that decision, be open about it. Be transparent about it. And explain the reason for that decision, which is rational transparency. So those are the four foundations of authentic leadership. Now, if those are the four foundations of authentic leadership, what is the influencing factors? How do we actually get influenced? How do we make some of these decisions, and what runs in our mind towards making these decisions as an authentic leader? Now here, there are four positive psychological capacities that every human being has or comes across at certain point in time. And remember, they work very close to each other, right? The first most important thing that we all as human beings live with is hope, right? If there was no hope, most of us as human beings would not survive today, right? There's a hope for tomorrow. There's a hope for the future. There's a hope for a better next year. There's a hope for a better future, right? Hope is something that keeps us alive. It's a very positive psychological capacity. It is something that we have not seen, but hope allows us to visualize that one day it will happen. And the entire existence of the human life has been based on hope, simply because that allows us to sleep tonight and get up tomorrow morning. Now that hope leads to the second psychological capacity, which is optimism. So hope automatically gives optimism. It says things will be okay. If I put my work hard, it will get there. The ability to be positive, the ability to look at the nicer side of things than the negative side of things, right? So hope leads to optimism. It allows us to be a lot more positive. Now, everything in life is not always positive. Sometimes things go negative as well. And therefore that leads us to our third box, which is called resilience. Irrespective of sometimes things going negative, do I have the ability to stand that negative issue? Do I have the ability to bear with that issue? Can I be resilient? Am I able to withstand those failures, right? For example, sometimes you want a new job and you did not get through that interview. So instead of being negative, analyze what is it that I did not do well in this interview, so that next time I go for an interview, that I can bring back that optimism, right? Sometimes you want to get into a university, you want to get into a course, you want to buy a new house. Sometimes things are not possible. There are other things that comes through. How do you become resilient to be able to manage that situation and look forward to handling that particular problem. And that is what resilience is all about. And finally, all of that together, hope, optimism, and resilience, brings about confidence, right? Which is why we all are thriving in this world, is confidence. When I have hope, when I know that tomorrow there will be a good future, and that hope leads to optimism, which is positive thoughts. Sometimes things go negative, but I have the resilience to manage it. And therefore, when I have hope, optimism, and resilience, I have the ability to be confident. I know what I can do. So when you bring these 4 positive psychological capabilities, they tend to influence how a leader behaves. A leader has to have a lot of hope. A leader has to have a lot of optimism. A leader has to have a lot of resilience when things do not go the way he plans. And finally, a leader must be confident, has to be confident. So those are the influencing factors that are there within that particular thing. If you look at one of the examples, right, examples of an authentic leader, and I'm sure most of you may have heard or known about this person, Nelson Mandela, the great South African leader, 27 years in prison while trying to fight for freedom from the British rule. Right? Nelson Mandela is an example of an authentic leader because of his strong conscious and deep moral values. What does that mean? He was very, very clear of what he wanted. He had a purpose. He had a clear vision. And therefore he related to his people very well. His fight was not a 1-year fight or a 2-year fight. It was 27 years where he was in prison, in and out multiple times. But his cause did not change. He did not get tired. He did not feel negative. He did not say, I'm going to stop it. He did not say, you know what, let me get released from prison and go back to my family. I don't need to do this for this country. He was consistent. He pursued it. He had very good emotional skills. He connected well with people. And eventually, he managed to get freedom for South Africa. And that is a good example of an authentic leader who has the ability to do all of the things that we spoke about till now and to be able to bring about large change in society. Finally, we go into how does these things work, right? What is the practical approach? You know, what is the theoretical approach? Are you born? Are you developed, right? So, authentic leadership, like we said earlier, is developed over a period of time. To everybody who says leadership is a born trait, I would say it's not, right? It is an influence right from the day you're born, definitely. It is shaped from the time that you're a child, without a doubt. But it is something that is developed over a period of time, right? Beginning from childhood to your adulthood. And therefore, authentic leadership is developed over time. And why is that? Because for authentic leadership, you need to have experiences. And you cannot have experience just when you are born. You have to meet with people. You have to face failures. You have to face negative situations. And all of those shapes your leadership. So to be an authentic leader, you have to face life. You have to be out there facing situations, some positive and some negative. And that is why authentic leadership is developed over a period of time. Now, the most important question about an authentic leader, the theoretical solution for this, and the question that answers how do you identify an authentic leader, is that can we trust this leader, right? The strengths of authentic leadership theory tells you that a good authentic leader is a leader who's trustable, who's genuine, who I have faith in. And therefore, if you can't trust somebody, and trust, mind you, my dear friends, is a very, very tough thing to trust people, right? Because trust also means that you're happy to let that person make decisions for you. And that's not an easy thing to do for a lot of people. So when you actually trust somebody, you know that person has authentic leadership. Right from childhood, a child starts trusting the mother and the father, then slowly starts trusting the immediate family. then starts trusting friends, then starts trusting the community, then starts trusting the workplace. Over a period of time, slowly with experiences, we build trust. And there are also people we don't trust. So the word trust, the word faith becomes very, very important component of an authentic leader. So if you want to identify who's an authentic leader, I think the question you need to ask is very, very simple. Is that person a person I can trust? And if that person is a person I can trust, then that person is an authentic leader. And now I will reverse that point and say, if you have to be an authentic leader, you have to be trustworthy. You have to do things consistently. People have to trust what you say, what you do. Because mind you, people are allowing you to make decisions for them. And therefore it's very, very important that an authentic leader is trustworthy. Now, one of the most important criticisms about authentic leadership. There are a lot of positives about authentic leadership. But however, research continues. A lot of universities are working a lot on trying to identify, are there other characteristics? Like Manar mentioned here, being smart is one of the characteristics as well, right? So a lot of research is going on. A lot of universities and research institutes are trying to find out what makes a significantly important leader. What kind of things does a leader really need to have? And so the idea of authentic leadership theory is still in its initial steps. People are still learning about it, still trying to find out more about it. And with time, we will hear more and more characteristics or more and more features about this, right? There is a theory now, and that's what we spoke about until now. But there are also more things that are happening where the entire concept of authentic leadership might change. Mind you, leadership also changes depending on the kind of situation we are in, right? Today, we are all living in modern societies. So the leadership traits or characteristics of a modern society are quite different from the society, let's say 200, 300, 400 years ago. So depending on how society changes, depending on how society modifies itself, leadership traits or characteristics will change as well. Today there's a lot of emphasis on technology. So a lot of leadership is also based on how do you use and consume technology. So you will see a lot more of changes coming in and a lot more of new research coming in when it comes to authentic leadership very soon. My dear friends, any questions? And that is my final piece on authentic leadership. I hope you enjoyed the session. If you have any questions or any comments, I will leave the floor open for a couple of minutes. Else we can call it a day. Anybody who has any comments, any viewpoints, or any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat box. Thank you, Manar. Thank you for your comment. Anybody, any questions, any comments? Idas, thanks a lot again. Thank you for your questions and your point of view. Muad, thank you. Thanks a lot. Great. I think we'll terminate this call right now. Thanks a lot for your comments and for your views. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you.
كل ما قاعد يطلع.
Hopefully everything went fine. Oh, it was very good. I mean, this there's no reaction from the other side, so I'm assuming everything went well. Yes, that's good. I know we're watching the chat just in case some difficulties.
Yeah, no, I think a couple of people did comment on this stuff.
حطيت الفيديو.
ما قاعد يطلع من الشاشة. اوكي بسكر هذا ممكن تغير. ارسلته هذاك.
Thank you. So 8, same thing?
بس اوكي كويس. لكن ايش تغير؟
Same 1 o'clock, right? Yeah. You right or the first one?
No, it'll be me.
Yeah.
لكن ايش تغير هذا الصوت؟
It'll be me or Talal, but I think mostly it's me. Let me just see how it goes. Either one of us will. I've always told Talal that these sections are best that he does it. Because the audience is largely somebody who will relate to.
Yeah, to what is it? Largely to what he
Yeah, exactly.